meeting. You should have your minutes from the committee of the whole from May the 5th, 2020. Do I have any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, do I have a move for approval?
Move for approval.
Second.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have a motion second.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. We got you. It's a little delayed on some of you, but I think we had all eyes on that one. So thank you for your patience. All right. Do we have any questions on the agenda tonight for the city manager? Questions related to our agenda?
I don't have a specific question for on the agenda, but I did have something I wanted to bring up. As a lot of us know, Auburn High School seniors would have graduated, I believe it's this Thursday night. And I just wanted to see if we could have maybe some discussion around doing something to support the seniors, just because this is a different time. I feel like they've all lost a lot of things that I believe that they should have been able to have. And so I just think having something from the city to show that we're supporting them, I think is something I'd like to discuss and just see where this goes. I've spoken.
Anybody else like to follow up with Stephen's comment?
Well,
Stephen,
I
I
would support
certainly
that.
support
I
that.
think
What are we
it's going to
following
be
up
a
on?
unique
I was
time.
a little,
Sorry.
Go ahead, Beth. Go ahead, Ms.
It's
Whitney.
okay. We clearly have a very, okay. Sounds like we have a very, maybe a 3 to 4 second delay. So I guess we all just need to be patient with that tonight, but I would support the council rallying behind our seniors in some capacity, in some way. And I know that the community would probably follow behind us as well.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
okay, this is Connie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can, yes.
Oh, okay. Because I can't see you. Can you see me, Jim?
No. Do you want to?
No.
Now, Connie, it is telling us that your network bandwidth is low. So that, well, it's actually telling us that, I'm wondering if it's our bandwidth that's low.
Go ahead, Connie. We got you now.
I was just wondering what the question was because I missed all of that.
Stephen, would you like to repeat your comments from earlier?
Yeah, I can repeat. Basically, this coming Thursday would have been the class of 2020 graduation, and I just wanted to see if there was some support from the council to maybe do something special to recognize the seniors in the high school seniors. I've got kind of a short list of ideas that I think we could do, and that I've discussed with Mayor Anders and with Councilperson Witten. So I just want to see, I can throw those ideas out right now, or I was just kind of gauging to see if this was something worth looking into, or if we should just let the graduation occur in July. I mean, not that we don't have any say so in that, but just if we wanted to do something as a city to show support, or because they are still having graduation. It's just a delayed date.
Sure. Connie, did you get all that?
Okay, I did, and it sounds good to me.
Okay. So look, I agree with you, Stephen, and agree with you too, Beth. I think this is a unique circumstance, and I believe that it'd be great for the city to think about if there's an extra way we could support these young men and women. who have faced an unusual spring and certainly an end to their school career here in Auburn. So I'd love to get together and contemplate what those ideas could be. Now that we know the exact date that they're going to graduate on, we can discuss how we can be supportive. But I think it's a grand idea, and I would love to sit around and discuss what your ideas are, Stephen, and vet those. So why don't I get in touch with you guys tomorrow? If there's anybody else on the council that has a keen interest in that, let me know. I'll get with the city manager and we'll create a meeting very soon to begin discussing those, if that's okay. Is that all right?
Yes. That's great.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Stephen, for bringing that up. I appreciate where you're coming from.
Kelly has his hand raised.
Okay. Anyone else has anything for the city manager? Maybe questions for the agenda tonight or any other comment? Yes. Is there someone else? Kelly?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to take a look at the agenda, the upcoming agenda for this evening. And I would like to make a motion to remove item 8 Bravo 4, which is regarding the Graduate Hotel, from tonight's agenda and remand it back to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission documents that we have in the packet note that the Planning Commission can make a recommendation on parking. I understand that they've submitted a waiver request and that's in process, but I, for one, would love to hear a recommendation from the Planning Commission. I know several of them did not vote on it because of concerns on parking, because they felt that was not under their purview at the time. So I would like to have that item removed completely from this evening and remand it back to the Planning Commission to await their recommendation.
This is certainly an unusual situation, ladies and gentlemen, people that are listening. This is not something I will be a part of the discussion. Mr. Buston, should I remove myself for this piece of discussion?
You could let Mayor Pro Tem Whitten address it.
Okay. Ms. Whitten, I'm going to let you take control of this conversation for the next few minutes, and I'll step outside, okay?
Certainly. While I respect your motion, Councilperson Griswold, I believe what's in front of us is a conditional use approval, and which does not have a bearing regarding parking. That purview lies with the planning director, and that was clearly stated at the Planning Commission's meeting. And I certainly can't get in the head of those who weren't present or who abstained or voted the way they voted. So, but before us is a simple request of a use, and that's what our task is this evening for that agenda item. I personally am not in favor of postponing this item or remanding it back to the commission. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to add to that?
Well, I just want to ask a question. You said that it's only pertaining to the use of the, I guess, what are we actually voting on tonight? We're not, it's not dealing with parking. It's just, do we want that building? How you know, I'm trying to figure out what are we actually voting on tonight? And when the parking issue comes up, is that something separate? Will it come back to the council? How does that work, Beth?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question, Councilwoman Taylor. Our task is a conditional use, and it is strictly related to, do we think it is appropriate use for a hotel in that lot, in that area of town, which is the urban core. The parking piece of that, the applicant has asked for a parking waiver, and therefore that responsibility lies with the planning director. That has been in place since 2012, that process. And that has been what has taken place in previous conditional use not conditional use requests, but other properties that have requested waivers, that has gone through the planning director's office to make that determination. Does that answer your question?
Well, yes, sort of, but okay, at the end of that, I guess I hear the use part is what we vote on tonight. So when they does to get their I I guess, permit or whatever they waiting on, then does that come back to the council at a later date?
No, ma'am, it does not. And no, as it has not in the past for other projects.
Okay. Okay, that was my question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Any other council members have a question?
Yeah, I'd really hate to get lost in the weeds this early in the process when we're just discussing a conditional use tonight. You know, I think there's going to be a lot of discussion on various parts of this project that can take place at the appropriate time. So I'd be all for moving forward with our conditional use tonight.
I'm also in favor of moving forward with conditional use. The parking is, like you said, on the purview of Mr. Cotton, so that'd be his decision. And I think it's been to the planning commission already. I think we need to move forward with it.
Any other council members have any comments, or is there a second to Mr. Griswold's motion?
As long as everybody else has had their say, I have just a couple of comments, please. Is it still appropriate at this time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm looking at the packet in front of us, and it says, and I'm quoting, "The Planning Commission may attach recommendations, conditional use approval, additional criteria dealing with buffer yards, parking, lighting, and building materials," you know, on and on. I, for one, would appreciate hearing what the Planning Commission's recommendations would be before we vote, because I believe that we are not voting for conditional use for a generic use as a hotel. We're voting on conditional use for a project, a hotel project that has been presented to us in detail. So again, I think there's a distinction between conditional use for a generic use and conditional use for a specific project to see if that project is appropriate. So I may be interpreting conditional use voting incorrectly, and if so, we can move on. But again, I would ask that we honor the packet that's in front of us, and it says that they may attach recommendations. They themselves were confused. The planning commissioner, if you listen to the meeting, was concerned and confused that this was out of the ordinary. So that's why I would propose that we take our time with this, let all those that normally advise us do so. I'm not saying it's not up to the planning director to make the final decision. They've asked for a waiver, and that's fine. He can rule on that waiver. But at some point, I assume we will see a development agreement. I don't know if the development agreement will include anything to do with parking or not. Normally it hasn't in the past. But there's a couple of things, including the staff comment on this packet, that says that the proposed, again quoting, "the proposed use shall not result in substantial or undue adverse effects." It goes on about various categories, but it says to include parking. And yet the staff comment was the proposed use will not have undue or adverse impacts. So there's not even a set of criteria in place for them to have made that statement yet. So again, my motion is on the table. If someone wants to second it, the motion is that we remove this from the council agenda and remand it back to the planning commission for their recommendation.
Do I have a second? Okay, seeing none, that fails. Any other matter of business within the committee of the whole? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we are adjourned from the committee of the whole. Mr. Buston, you may ask the mayor to come back in, please.
And he's on his way.
Thank you.
Okay, the blue.
We're ready to start the.
All right, we'll call to order tonight's Auburn City Council meeting for May the 19th, 2020. Lindsay, would you please call the roll?
See if she's on.
He's muted.
So she muted
Lindsay, unmute
Oh,
yourself.
sorry.
it. It's all right.
Dawson,
Here.
Dixon,
Here.
Griswold,
Here.
Hovey,
Here.
Parsons,
Here.
Smith, Taylor,
Here.
Witten,
Here.
Anders.
Here. During the committee of the whole tonight, we discussed potentially looking at some support for Auburn High School and the graduating class of 2020, who has certainly endured an unusual back half of their school year. And we agreed for a couple of the council members to get together in the near future and discuss some ideas. Councilman Dixon brought this forward and asked us to consider that. So we'll put some ideas together and potentially reach out to the school system and the superintendent's office and just see where this goes. There was also another discussion that I did not partake in, and so I will not give a report on that at this time. Under announcements tonight, just a couple of things of note, and I did have something I wanted to recognize a little bit later. I want to remind everybody in our community that the United Way is a conduit for support for people that are facing difficult times during the pandemic that we're currently experiencing. They have done a great job reaching out to different community partners in our area to develop ways to support individuals through food, medication, or other needs. So I just want to remind our community, if you're looking for somewhere to support, that the United Way is a great place to do that. They've always done a tremendous job for our community each and every year. And I know Councilman Hovey is very involved in United Way. Jay, I didn't tell you I was going to mention this tonight, but if you'd like to add to that comment, please go ahead.
Well, I appreciate you saying so. And I know that, I've been in communication with staff there, and they've been heavily involved in so many facets of help and aid over the last year. We're still trying to wrap our minds around last March. And then we've got a whole new pandemic episode to deal with this year, but they're very active, and I'm proud to be associated in the slightest way with them.
Good. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you for saying something.
Yep. Want to remind our community about the census. We're still running a little bit behind. We are in a small competition with the city of Tuscaloosa about participation. So we'd certainly like to be the city of Tuscaloosa anytime we could. So please, everyone, take a few minutes. It's very easy to fill out your census. Go online and do that. If you've got any questions, please call us at the city and we can help you walk through some of those questions. But it's very important that we're all accounted for as we move forward. Memorial Day is not unlike everything else that we've experienced recently. It's going to be impacted by the world that we're currently living in. For 20-something years, former Mayor Bill Ham had hosted the Mayor's Memorial Day breakfast, and we certainly did that last year. But we're not going to be able to do that this year. But we will have a Memorial Day ceremony that will take place at the Veterans Memorial at 9 o'clock. The public is not necessarily invited, but we do encourage you to watch it through live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. We will take the Mayor's Memorial Day breakfast, and our plan is to move it to Veterans Day for this year. So we'll have a Veterans Day breakfast for this year, and then certainly have a Veterans Day ceremony, and we'll do that in November. But for Memorial Day, if you're up at 9 o'clock, please pay attention. And I just encourage our community, as always, to be mindful of those who have paid the ultimate price to protect our freedoms in this country, and certainly want to encourage all of you to get up and participate in our breakfast this year. Speaking of paying the ultimate price, today is the 1-year anniversary of the murder of Officer Will Beekner. That was a night that none of us will ever forget. I want to commend our local newspaper, the OA News, for doing a great job creating a memory of that in today's paper and online. And I would encourage you to go back and look at that and see some of the visuals of what that day was like when Officer Beekner ceremony, his funeral, and the procession over to Town Creek. It was very powerful. I first of all want to say I'm very pleased that Officer Elliott and Officer Sistrunk are doing well, and they're back serving us. And I'm just thankful that those guys are back with us and participating in our police force again. And our thoughts and prayers continue to be with those guys as they continue to recover from what happened to them a year ago and what they experienced. But in honor of Officer Buechner, I have created with the city staff a proclamation, and I'd like to read it to each of you. For each of us here tonight, we will formally present this to his family at a later date. And then once I get through reading this proclamation, if we could all just have a moment of silence like we normally do in our regular meetings, just to remember Officer Buechner and what he gave to us a year ago. So the proclamation reads, whereas William Buechner Jr. was born August the 27th, 1981 in Montgomery, and he was a proud graduate of Auburn University. And whereas Will Buechner was an Auburn resident and faithfully served as a member of the Auburn Police Division for 13 years, and whereas Officer Buechner was a dedicated police officer, loving husband and father, and exemplary member of the Auburn community. And whereas on May 19th, 2019, Officer Buechner was tragically killed while protecting the Auburn community in the line of duty. Whereas Officer Buechner is remembered for his love of Auburn, his sense of humor, his bravery, and his unwavering dedication to the job. Therefore, I, Ron Anders Jr., the mayor of the city of Auburn, do hereby proclaim May the 19th, 2020 to be Officer William Buechner Day in the city of Auburn, honoring and recognizing the life and sacrifice of an Auburn hero. If you would all please have a moment of silence in the memory of Will Buechner. Thank you. We got a report this afternoon on how we're doing with COVID-19. As of today, we have 139 infections of Auburn City of Auburn residents, and we have had 8 citizens that have passed away due to the coronavirus. It's very important now that our community is somewhat has been opened. Our businesses are open. Some of our restaurants are open. I ask our community not to be reckless with their behavior, to remember that we're still in a fight, to be respectful of those that they could be around and that they will be around, and to practice all the social distancing, the good hygiene, not being in large groups that we have been asking everybody to do for a couple of months now. Just because we've received the opportunity to do some things that we haven't done all spring doesn't mean that we should change some of our habits. So I encourage our community, let's don't show a spike in these numbers. Let's be mindful of where we are and what we're facing. Enjoy those freedoms. Get back outside, certainly. Go have something to eat, certainly. But be very mindful and be very respectful of the situation that we're still in, okay? All right. Want to remind everybody who would like to speak tonight to please raise your hand with your Zoom application, and we'll do the best we can to get you called on, okay? All right, those are all the announcements for me. Are there any other city council announcements?
Well, I just have a question. On the announcement concerning the COVID-19 and opening up of the businesses.
Yes.
Are there any type of, I guess, anything put in place with the city when you do have a large group of people that enters and they're not protecting themselves? Is the city putting in any type of, I guess, restrictions or regulations to those businesses, and even to, and I asked that question really because on Canton, they had a big party the other night, and there was maybe hundreds of people there, and they wasn't social distant. I do know that. I didn't see anybody with social mask and gloves and that type of stuff on. So how's the city handle that? Is there no handle to it, or is there a handle to it? Is
Sure.
My question. I mean,
Sure, I'll let the city manager answer that question.
I'm sorry, I was.
That's fine. Connie wanted to know, what is the city's response going to be to the governor's request for certain businesses to be at 50% capacity and for restaurants to be practicing good hygiene as far as their servers to be wearing masks and gloves, and what are we doing about large groups that are gathering, those kind of things. So just city's response.
So basically, as the governor and as the health department has advised us, they advise us to be lenient, to act more in the role of educator rather than punitive or giving out citations or whatever. So when we do see that there is some type of and I don't want to call it a violation, but someone that is not adhering to those guidelines that the governor has set out, we will advise them that what the governor has asked of the citizens of Auburn. To date, when we have had interactions with different businesses or different groups of people, it's all gone very smoothly. We will react mostly from complaints. We aren't going around, we don't have the personnel, nor do we have the ability to go around and try to enforce whatever those, and we don't even have a clear understanding of what those orders are. So we will do our best to advise people when we get a complaint, what we believe the governor's orders were. And we do expect that we will hear from the governor again shortly. And we do expect that she will even reduce further some of her guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, any announcements from the city council members?
Mayor,
Okay,
if I may.
sure, I'm sorry. Yep,
That's
go ahead,
okay.
Ms. Whitten.
I just wanted to give a congratulations to Councilperson Smith and the addition of their third child, who was she was brought into the world yesterday. So congratulations to him and his wife and their new family of 5. So and I know he's made a statement on his Facebook page, but that is why he's not in attendance this evening. So congratulations to Councilperson Smith on the addition of their new daughter.
Thank you. Thank you for recognizing that. Congratulations to the Smiths. Great. Anything else from the council?
Congratulations.
Okay, this time we'll move to citizens' communications on items on the agenda. Let me say, there are a number of items on our agenda that have public hearings. If you are speaking to an item that has a public hearing, we will ask you to wait until that item comes on our agenda before you speak. But certainly if it doesn't have a public hearing and you would like to speak to any item on our agenda, now is your time. All right. So do we have anybody who'd like to speak to items on our agenda tonight?
Raise their hand.
Please raise your hand on your Zoom application. No? Okay, we'll move forward then in consideration of the consent agenda.
So first of all, under city manager's communication.
Oh, sorry about that.
We have the announcement of 2 vacancies on the planning commission. This is a 6-year term, which will begin August 1st, 2020 city council meeting. The next item of business is the consent agenda. Does any council member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and deal with that item separately?
Anyone? Okay. See no one, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
All right, do I have a second? All right. Have a motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda carries.
Under ordinances this evening, we have item 7A is the approval of the back-to-school sales tax holiday for the weekend beginning July 17th through July 19th, 2020.
I'll
I'll
introduce the
introduce
ordinance.
ordinance and
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Does anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with the vote on this evening? Seeing none, Lindsay, please.
Dawson,
yes, ma'am.
Dixon, Griswold,
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I was muted. I said yes.
Okay. Hovey,
Yes, ma'am.
Parsons,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Anders.
Yes. This time, do I have any questions or comments from the council? Hearing no one but Stephen's dog, do I have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second. Lindsay?
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Griswold,
Yes, ma'am.
Hovey,
Yes, ma'am.
Parsons,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Anders.
Yes.
Item 7B is the approval of the working capital loan interest subsidy program for Auburn Bank, making loans to Auburn Oil Company Booksellers LLC and the Draft House of Auburn LLC. A public hearing is required.
I'll introduce the
Introduce the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent.
I believe we have a motion and a second. Does anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with a vote on this evening? Hearing and seeing no one. Lindsay?
Dixon,
Yes.
Griswold,
Yes, ma'am.
Hovey,
I'll abstain.
Parsons,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Anders.
Yes. This time we'll open the public hearing. If you'd like to address the city council on this issue, please raise your hand on Zoom and please give your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, is there any questions from the council? Okay, seeing and hearing no one, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Lindsay?
Dixon,
Yes.
Griswold,
Yes, ma'am.
Hovey,
Abstain.
Parsons,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Anders.
Yes.
Item 7C is a commercial development agreement with Midtown Coffee LLC located at 223 Opelika Road. A public hearing is required.
I'll introduce the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent. Sorry.
Second. That's okay.
I have a motion and a second. Does anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with a vote on this evening? Seeing and hearing no one. Lindsay?
Griswold,
Yes, ma'am.
Hovey,
Yes, ma'am.
Parsons,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Anders.
Yes. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. If you'd like to address the city council, please give your name and address for the record. And please raise your hand through your Zoom application. Seeing no one, are there any questions from the council or comments?
I would, yes, Mayor, if I may.
Please.
I would just like to thank Midtown Coffee LLC for their commitment in preserving the old Day Spring building and for working to bring 10 equivalent of 10 jobs to our community, especially during uncertain times. And so I think they should be commended for that. And I appreciate the city working with them on a development agreement to help them be a viable asset to Auburn.
Thank you, Ms. Whitten. Anyone else from the council? Ms. Whitten, I totally agree with you. I really appreciate the entrepreneurs with Midtown Coffee for wanting to open this business, for opening it in a strategic location and saving a building that is unique to Auburn. And I thank the staff and economic development team for helping them make this happen. Okay. All right. Any other comments? All right. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Lindsay?
Griswold,
Yes, ma'am.
Hovey,
Yes, ma'am.
Parson,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Anders.
Yes.
Excuse me. Item 7D is the extension of the moratorium on the construction of private dormitories and academic detached dwelling units within the city of Auburn until August 25th, 2020, unless acted upon by the council. This would be a 90-day extension.
I'll introduce the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent.
Second.
Second.
Have a motion and seconds. Anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with a vote on this evening? Seeing and hearing no one. Lindsay?
Hovey,
Yes, ma'am.
Parsons,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Griswold,
Yes.
Anders.
Yes. Any questions from the council? Or comments?
I would just like to thank Jim for his email earlier this week, late last week, sort of outlining a few of the ideas and the momentum moving forward. I know everyone's working hard at it, and we've got a big elephant to eat. But I appreciate the update. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Hovey. Anyone else from council? Certainly, as soon as we can get back to operating in a more normal vein, we'll get together and we'll start looking at this memorandum that the staff has put together, some of these concepts and ideas, and we'll share that with the public and we'll move forward. We have no reason to delay this. We just need to be allowed to get back together and work. So it's our promise to the community, just as soon as that door opens for us, we'll get together and start talking about this. All right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Lindsay?
Hovey,
Yes, ma'am.
Parsons,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Griswold,
Yes.
Anders.
Yes.
Under resolutions this evening, we have item 8A. It's the vacation of a right-of-way and execution of a quitclaim deed in the Brentwood subdivision on Bonnie Glen Road. A public hearing is required.
Move for approval.
Second.
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. At this time, we'll open up the public hearing. If there's anyone that'd like to address the council, please give your name and address for the record. Great. All right. Seeing no one, are there any questions or comments from council members? Okay. Hearing no one, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8B1 is Moses Eason requesting conditional use approval for a climate-controlled storage building and mini warehouse located on West Creek Parkway adjacent to Lynch Automotive. This item was previously approved by council and the applicant is asking for a 6-month extension to begin work. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of this 6-month extension.
Move for approval.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the council? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8B2 is John Ronnie Watson requesting conditional use approval for a miniature lawn golf course on property located at the southwest corner of East University Drive and DeKalb Street. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this request. This item was postponed from the April 21st, 2020 City Council meeting.
Move for approval.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions from the council?
I would just like to acknowledge that we have the applicant's representative, Mr. Gosselin, on the Zoom with us. If there are any questions, I know before when we first saw this agenda item, we had a couple of questions. And the reason we postponed was because they were not present. So if I may, Mr. Gosselin, if you could just walk us through some of the things that you have volunteered to do and what you think this will bring to the neighborhood.
Mr. Gosselin, before you begin, Connie, we're getting some comments. I believe there's some feedback coming from your microphone. Is it possible for you to mute yourself just temporarily?
I don't see. Listen, ain't nobody around, so, but I don't know. How do you mute this thing? How do you mute it? Because it's just me. Unless it's the birds. Let me close my door, okay?
Well,
is that what you hear twerping from the birds?
I think it's actually coming from your computer itself. Let Greg ask you to mute, and then he'll ask you to unmute. Can you?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Good, Connie. Thank you. Thank you for everybody's patience. We hope to be back in our new council chambers in 2 weeks. We'll see. But that's our hope.
Mr. Gosselin.
Mr. Gosselin?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you for hearing our case. This is a unique project, and we wanted to make sure there wasn't any misunderstanding about it, but we feel like it's going to be a great contribution to this area, and wanted to make sure that the council understood that we've reached out and tried to address all the concerns. There's some residential areas behind us to the south, and we actually have some an area that we're going to leave undeveloped as a buffer to DeKalb, and then also an area to the south of us. We're electing voluntarily to put in a type 3 fence there along a residential property there. So we know there's been some concerns about the traffic, and we're complying with the ingress to that property, and making sure that we don't cause any problems there with that. But we hope each of the council persons have had a chance to look at the pictures there. We feel like this is going to be a beautiful project. Maybe the only thing being better would be a community park. But we feel like we've addressed all the questions and concerns of the neighbors, and spoken with Councilperson Witten and addressed all those. So I'm open to any questions, and thank you for considering the project.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gosselin. So if it's okay, could you stay on the line and see if the council has any questions for you? Is anyone on the council that has a question? Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Gosselin. We appreciate you taking time to be with us tonight, okay?
Yeah,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I want to make sure that there's no follow-up questions or comments. Is there anybody on the council that has anything they'd like to say?
I was wondering if there's anyone in the public wanting to speak about this.
Mr. Parsons, there's no public hearing with this tonight.
Thank you.
The public hearing was at the last meeting, and certainly that was this was one of the agenda items I was thinking about when people would speak at the beginning. But there is no public hearing. Anyone else on the council that might have anything they want to say? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed?
Nay.
All right. That's one nay. Okay.
Item 8B3 is Rob Selby requesting conditional use approval for a multifamily development on property located at 1630 Academy Drive. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of this item. A public hearing is required.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. At this point in time, we do have a public hearing attached to this item. Is there anyone who would like to address the city council? If there is, please give your name and address for the record and raise your hand through your Zoom application. Do we have anybody? Okay. Seeing no one, is there any comments or questions from the council? Okay. Seeing or hearing from no one, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. For this last item on the agenda, I will step out and let Mayor Pro Tem Beth Whitten take over. This agenda item concerns a piece of property that my family owns. So out of an abundance of caution, I'm completely removing myself from the discussion and the vote on this item. In full transparency, I want to let you know that I haven't spoken to the council about this item other than to confirm that our Mayor Pro Tem would run the rest of the meeting for me. Thank all of you. Have a nice evening.
And item 8B4 is Parker Lewis requesting conditional use approval for a hotel on property located at 202 and 212 West Magnolia Avenue. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this issue. A public hearing is required.
Okay, at this time, a public hearing is required. I will open the public hearing and ask that if you plan to speak, that you please click on raise your hand, and please allow patience through this process as it's virtual, as we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. So at this time, I'm going to call on Tim Ryan.
There we go. Hello, can y'all hear me, see me?
We can hear you, Mr. Ryan.
Excellent. Good evening. Thanks so much for the time. Again, my name is Tim Ryan. I'm the Chief Investment Officer for Graduate Hotels. I really want to thank all of you on City Council and within the community for the opportunity to speak tonight. And of course, I and we thank you for our consideration of this project. You know, first off, I hope everybody's families are safe and well as we ride out this difficult time. Under normal circumstances, we'd be thrilled to be together with you all in person tonight, but obviously that wasn't possible, and really appreciate all that you've done to make this the next closest thing. It's certainly really impressive and really, really helpful and much appreciated. I was hoping to just take a few moments to introduce everybody to us, your applicant and Graduate Hotels, and to highlight a few key points for Council's consideration this evening. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, Graduate Hotels, we are just a super passionate bunch of storytellers, really. You know, we are developers of real estate, investors in real estate, and hotel operators, and we are interior designers and branders and marketers and all of those things. We're a very broadly integrated shop of super passionate, creative people who love what we do. What we do is really hard, and we wouldn't get out of bed to do it every day if we weren't in love with it. We launched Graduate Hotels over 5 years ago, recognizing that so many great university communities have these wonderful traditions and characters and so much charm and nostalgia and great reasons to come back and celebrate, but so often not much in the way of a place to stay that embodies all of those wonderful characters and qualities. And so, you know, we've set out to help change that, and we're thrilled about the opportunity to join the Auburn community. Hopefully, you know, it's been our hope and desire since this was launched. Oh, I see here I didn't have video. Do I have video now? Hello.
Yes,
probably. You know, it's been our hope and desire to be in Auburn since we launched Graduate, and it's been a long road. We spent over 5 years working toward this effort, and we are thrilled for it to feel hopefully within range. So that's wonderful. You know, high level, as we've seen, so I should back up. We have, after 5 years of growth, we have 22 Graduate Hotels open and operating around the country today. We have more than gosh, I think is the world would know about at least 12 in development across the United States, and in the United Kingdom, I could name more than 20. So we're, the growth effort is meaningful, but we're also very, very, careful and calculating about which communities we serve and celebrate. And in this, what we do is really the opposite of anything cookie cutter or commodity. And that's what we're getting rewarded for. So in that spirit, what we've seen so many times in the communities we've joined and helped grow across the country is that we're growing the pie, so to speak. I believe this hotel will make Auburn, downtown Auburn specifically, much more attractive, viable, and suitable to a broader base of conventions and meetings business. What we've seen is that, our graduate kind of faithful open up communities to a whole new channel or segment of leisure travelers, which is a boon for all involved. So, we're very community minded. We do have a great focus on great food and beverage for locals to enjoy and for our visitors to enjoy. But we also, we're very strategic about where we sit geographically in each location, because we want our guests to walk out of our doors and go eat and drink and shop at all the places that we're already in town that have nothing to do with us, that are just wonderful. We just want to help share that experience with our guests. And our guests are, and fans of our brand are really looking for an authentic and immersive and memorable experience, which is again why we're being rewarded for not having a more cookie cutter kind of strategy. And the good news and the exciting opportunity for all involved is that, again, our guests want to go shop, eat, drink, catch a ball game, go to a show, buy art, at all the local businesses around us. And so there's a nice rising tide effect for all involved that we really believe in, and we've seen happen several times over, and we're excited to hopefully help make happen here. I wanted to highlight that, in working with the Andrews family, we really respect their family history, dedication, and service to the Auburn community. And we're so honored and flattered to have their trust when it comes to being the stewards of this property. This is a storied property that's had a pivotal role in the community. It's also just, incredibly proximate to Toomer's Corner. And we know how valuable that is. We know that they must have had several options when it came to how to reimagine the fate of that real estate. And certainly just understanding from a pure zoning standpoint, whether it's residential apartments or retail or mix of uses, I've got enough experience in that world to know that there were probably some alternatives that would have been more attractive economically or yielded a higher return, but would have certainly been less romantic or less impactful for the community and the economy versus what we propose. And so we certainly appreciate the focus on legacy and community impact. That's really at the heartstrings and at the heart of what we do. Before I wrap up, because I do want to be brief, I want to make two key clarifications that should hopefully benefit us all and help make this gathering and future gatherings as productive as possible. First, I want to be clear that we're not requesting any public assistance of any kind, no tax incentives, no fee waivers, free utility work or loans of any sort. This is indicative of the level of investment that we've been prepared to make for a long time, and we're excited to make, even as these storied times challenge our industry in totally unprecedented ways. We believe in the course, and we want to stay the course. And we've been focused on that and the jobs that will be created, and again, kind of growing the pie for everyone's benefit. A couple of highlights I'd love to touch on from an economic standpoint, just high level. This is about a $65 million project or investment on our part that we're excited to make. We anticipate creating between 500 and 600 jobs during the construction phase. And once the hotel is up and running, we anticipate creating more than 100 new jobs. Between lodging taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, we project, more economic benefit to the tune of 1.3 million per year and growing over time, which we think is significant. And again, that doesn't take into account those ripple effects of our guests dining, shopping, making memories, attending events around town. Those are really, really meaningful. And we've seen in other markets how much that level of activity can raise the bar and grow the opportunity for everyone involved. So that's an important thing to highlight. And the other is, as I mentioned, we've been actively involved in the Auburn community for more than 5 years, trying to make this happen, trying to make this dream real. And that amount of time has afforded us a lot of meaningful insight, but maybe none more than a clear understanding of the concerns around parking. And so I wanted to address those. Not only are we sensitive to those concerns, because it's the only way to do something authentic is to think and act like a local stakeholder from day one. But from a practical standpoint, I mean, we're the last people on earth who would want our hotel to have insufficient parking, because we'd fail if we couldn't deliver the level of service and the quality of experience that our guests would expect. You know, we'd be in a really bad way. And so we've never had an intention of trying to provide less parking than is truly needed. We've always been cognizant of that. And I think that this is a good opportunity to help clarify our kind of holistic approach, because my sense is that the kind of the single number embedded in the planning commission packet kind of didn't tell the whole story. So I just want to make clear, we've always anticipated providing as much as one space per key in the overall plan, which is to say the combination of on-site parking and off-site parking. And a valet operation with some off-site parking, or entirely off-site parking in some cases, you know, that is the norm, not the exception in our world, both in our portfolio and in our industry when it comes to urban hotels. So that's an important distinction that I wanted to clarify here. I mean, we're absolutely committed to working with city professionals going forward, especially the planning director, as I understand the process to be, in order to finalize a parking plan that you know, makes sure that we accommodate all the required spaces in totality. So I appreciate the opportunity to make that clarification, and I hope it simplifies things a little bit. And, you know, in conclusion, obviously, we really encourage you all to approve this conditional use permit tonight, and hope you will. And just want to emphasize that, you know, we believe our hotel will not only be a very appropriate use for downtown Auburn, but a very viable business and a really special place for y'all to enjoy. You know, we really believe it, and we see it time and again when a graduate hotel is intended to be an extension of everybody's kind of living room, backyard, campus, you name it. It's for locals to really enjoy as their own. And then the guests come later, and that's a special formula, and we're proud of it, and we're so excited and hopeful to bring it to Auburn. So anyhow, really appreciate you all listening for a couple minutes here, and just want to let you know I'm here with several members of our team. If there are any questions, we're happy to weigh in. Otherwise, I will wrap it up. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. We appreciate your willingness to bring this project to Auburn, and the time commitment and the investment that you've already made. Just a quick formality, I forgot to mention, do you mind stating your name and your address for the record?
Certainly, yes.
Thank
Timothy
you.
Ryan, and I get my mail at 1225 North Wells Street, apartment 715 in Chicago, Illinois, 60610.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I will call on Brian Wirth. Mr. Wirth?
Can you hear me? Thank you for letting me speak today. I'm sorry. Sorry about that inconvenience. I did have a couple questions that we had asked at the commission meeting in regards to them stating that there was no impact to the traffic, and that a future traffic study would be done. And it's my understanding that the way, and Mr. Buston, you might be able to clarify, the way that the ordinance is written is that the planning director can make a ruling on parking, but as far as traffic goes, when will that be taken into consideration? Because looking at the plans, first question, and maybe this is to Mr. Lewis, is how and where will guests park their cars for the check-in and check-out and the valet work? And that's looking at these plans that the only place to get a car up close to the building is on Wright Street or on Magnolia, no on-site valet drop-off or pickup.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wirth. We will ask those questions at the end when we go into discussion, and so they'll be answered at that time. Do you also mind stating your name and address for the record?
It's Brian Wirth, and I live at 211 South Gay Street, Auburn, Alabama.
Thank you.
And then I've got two other questions that sort of that go along with that also. in addition to that, not everyone that attends an event at the hotel will be a guest. What is the plan for those people for drop off and pickup? The event space appears to be designed to hold well over 300 attendees at an industry standard of 15 square foot per guest. Guests attending these events also to appear to be sharing the same drop off pickup as the hotel and restaurant. What, again, a question to the planning commission, planning director, Parker Lewis, is the plan for those drop-offs and pickups, and how do they not affect traffic patterns? And the third question is the graduate going to explain to the council and the public here tonight on how their parking proposal, valet offsite and onsite, will work, and the positive and negative parking impacts that they have had on other locations similar to Auburn?
Okay,
And those are my three questions.
great. Thank you, Mr. Wirth. All right, next I'll call on Kim Wirth. And Kim, while you're coming off of mute, if you will also state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, I'm sorry. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kim Wirth. I live at 211 South Gay Street in Auburn. I'm definitely the better half of the Wirth duo. I'm joking. That was my husband that just spoke. But I do appreciate everyone's, the opportunity tonight to speak to everyone. And I appreciate the council's opportunity to speak and set this meeting up. As I mentioned, my name is Kim Wirth. My husband Brian and I own and operate the Collegian Hotel downtown at the corner of Thatch and Gay. And we wanted to speak tonight about the proposal that's before us for the 177 room graduate hotel. We are asking the council to specifically deny, delay, or tie the conditional use approval for this project to a sensible parking solution, one that is based in fact and detail, and one that ultimately requires a one-to-one parking solution that would be one parking spot per hotel room. And I appreciate the Graduate Hotel's representative mentioning that, and they kept alluding to offsite parking. As someone who tries to park downtown regularly, I'm eager to hear their solution for offsite parking. Just a little bit, during the past 3 years, Brian and I have purchased, renovated, and opened the 40-room boutique hotel that's in the historic Whittle Dorm, and we live next to the hotel as well. So we live and work downtown. And when we were working on our project early on, we were striving to build a balanced development partnership with the city that everyone could be proud of. As developers, it was really important to us that we were committed to saving and transforming an important historical structure, but to also beautify what is somewhat a neglected corridor in the urban core, but then also to provide new jobs and tax revenue to the city coffers. In return for this, the city provided a loan that was tied to keeping and renovating the historic structure. And they also provided variances for our project to manage traffic flow and accommodate parking needs for guests. And I wrapped that all up in a few sentences, but those sentences took months to resolve. And the overwhelming amount of time was spent on parking. And I know that's a surprise to everyone, but that's really what brings us to the conversation and our eagerness to speak up tonight is, we're not opposed to a downtown hotel. We are opposed to this particular hotel plan that we think fails to even get reasonably close to outlining a plan, and we do not feel includes a solution to guarantee the one-to-one parking through the development's own investments. You know, the original plan for the collegiate that was completed by Hydro Engineering had 18 spaces on the Whittle site. And the remaining spots were going to be secured through off-site leases from businesses near Whittle, which is now the collegiate. When that was not met favorably, we acquired the house adjacent to the hotel. That was not our original intent, but we did acquire the house next to the hotel with the primary purpose of fulfilling the on-site parking requirements that were outlined. To make the economics work, we actually live in the house and it's our home. But the 1-for-1 variance, the 1 parking spot per room, was the final approval given to the collegiate by the Auburn City Planning Commission in an email dated on 3/15/17. And this 1-to-1 variance for the on-site parking was a concession on both sides. And we think this illustrates what a balanced development partner looks like. And the reason that I'm even getting into this background information, because after we spoke up at the commission meeting, we were surprised that we've struck a nerve. We have gotten a lot of backlash from the different community members, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about our project and our motives for speaking up. We're small business owners. We live in Auburn. We went to Auburn. We love Auburn. We own a business. We try to stay engaged in the community. And we are not opposed to a smart downtown hotel development. I spent 22 years in corporate America. Good competitors make you better. But we are against this project being built in one of the most congested areas of Auburn without having a plan in place to address on-site parking. You know, one of the conversations I had this week with a council member, they suggested I stick with what I knew. So tonight, I just want to share just a couple more things about what Brian and I know as owners and operators of a hotel in Auburn and as hotel developers in different areas, and most importantly, as residents of Auburn. So just a few more things that I want to share. 95%, really more than 95% of guests who stay at a hotel in Auburn drive a vehicle to their hotel. This is true. This is true for our neighboring, this is true for the Collegiate. It's true for our neighboring downtown hotels, for the hotels that are closest to the interstate. Auburn is not an urban destination. It is a driving destination. People are not jetting into town without a car. They are flying into Atlanta and renting a giant SUV most of the time, and they're expecting to park and have access to their vehicle. There were past comments that, you know, said that there was a suburban mentality for urban parking, or that, you know, there's all these empty parking spaces at these enormous student housing complexes that we have. That's a red herring. It's not comparable to a hotel in Auburn. In fact, I find the opposite has been true. For every one guest that doesn't have a car, I have 10 people that have 2 cars. You know, mom showed up with her daughter for move-in and both of them have a car. And then, you know, I have weddings and every bridesmaid is sharing a room and they all drove separately. Or, you know, 4 best friends are splitting in a very expensive game day room, but they all drove here from different parts of the company. So, you know, the idea that we're this urban destination that people don't drive to for a hotel stay, I think is a big fallacy. The second is that, you know, we benefited from city variances, and I support city variances for downtown development projects, but they should benefit both parties. I have yet to hear a truly compelling argument from anyone on why this particular project and its enormous parking shortfalls is such a great fit for this particular location. Again, this location. I mean, to deny the facts that we have before us is to overlook the obvious on parking. certainly jobs are important. We employ more than 35 people at our 40-room hotel. A downtown hotel will be jobs. The representative mentioned that. But the difference between building a 177-room hotel versus a 122-room hotel is negligible. So I'm not saying you can't have jobs, but again, the size of the hotel should fit the size of the property. We have such a great gift with the university adjacent to downtown. I just wonder why we doubt our ability to attract a better project or to negotiate better terms for what we're going to allow in the space. There is an abandoned hotel 1 block north of this location. The Auburn Bank, which is 3 blocks east, also had a hotel development underway. I can appreciate that the graduate operating model is to get as close to campus as possible. And I'm certainly not faulting that strategy, but it has to also be a fit with our downtown strategy. I was interested to hear about the one-to-one parking, but where is this mysterious offsite parking going to be? When I go downtown, I look for this offsite parking and I've yet to find it. And so my guests have as well, which is why we offer a shuttle service to get our guests downtown, because they can't find anywhere to park downtown. The other thing is that, I know the graduate has this model of getting close to campus and using a lot of offsite parking. I did some due diligence, and I know that the members of this council have done as well around the graduate projects. And I can always find a lot when I'm looking at a hotel by reading, their mediocre or negative reviews. And a consistent theme in those was parking. And I would just ask people to take a look at that. The last thing is, downtown Auburn, when we talk about this parking project, and the council member alluded to it earlier, is, this project will have some adverse effect on the city, and the commission's regard or disregard for even commenting on that is, to me, such a glaring omission. I feel that the council, as the elected council, has an obligation to recognize this fact and not punt this parking issue to the city director. If finding a parking space in Auburn was a competition, that corner of the city would be the most competitive area in this community. I'm not questioning the 55% parking shortfall that they have in this project, which equals 137 cars. I am questioning how they want to build a 177-room hotel when they aren't demonstrating through on-site parking, or even where this off-site parking is going to be, for these 177 spaces. And that's just the 1-to-1 ratio, which obviously I was glad to hear that they're committed to. So, right now with the valet, double and triple stacking on the 75 spots that they have, then they're going to be able to accommodate the 121 spaces or vehicles. Where are these other 56 guest cars going to park off-site? I saw on the plans that they had, showed a view of the McDonald's parking lot. Are they planning on leasing parking from McDonald's? Are they planning on using the parking deck that's yet to be constructed downtown for their parking? I just think for there not to be clear answers before the council's conditional use approval tonight is a huge mistake. So I know there's other people that may or may not want to talk, but just to kind of wrap things up. I mean, again, I appreciate the council's time tonight. I want to reiterate that I am not against future hotel development in Auburn, downtown or otherwise. I hope that we all come out of this, trying time in the hospitality business stronger. You know, our hotel project is in the urban core. There was some question about that at the commission meeting. You know, we are in the urban core. We were given the variance from the city's current parking ordinance from 1.25 down to 1 hotel room key, or one space per hotel room key. So we have 40 hotel rooms and we have 40 on-site parking spaces. You know, we need additional off-site spaces to accommodate guests for events and for the bar. But, you know, what I'm talking about and trying to reiterate is the on-site parking for the number of room keys or rooms that are going to be built in the hotel. So, you know, we're proud to have brought new jobs and tax revenue to the city. You know, our incentives and variances were very tied to saving the historical structure and building a development that the community could be proud of. I do disagree that with the assertion that tonight's vote is only on the use of the location as a hotel. I mean, the language that I read in the agenda clearly says that we're voting for conditional use approval for the Anders Enterprise for a commercial and entertainment use for the Graduate Hotel. And the Graduate Hotel has put forth what their plans are. This isn't just, that was mentioned earlier, a generic, hey, let's see somebody put a hotel up there, I wonder what they're gonna do. I'm respectfully asking the council to consider one of the following options. The first is to deny the conditional use approval for the Graduate Hotel project. The second would be for the council to consider delaying this conditional use approval until a full face-to-face public hearing could be held. This would be similar to delays for discussion on a the private dorm moratorium or the short-term rental. I think allowing for a face-to-face meeting on this issue is important because I think a lot of people don't feel comfortable using this technology, and to assume that just because you don't have a lot of people using Zoom doesn't mean that you don't have a lot of people that do want to speak up. The third thing is that if there was not any willingness to deny it or to delay it, is I would ask the council to amend the resolution to tie this conditional use approval to a sensible parking solution that outlines where these off-site parking spots are going to be for the 1-to-1 ratio, meeting that 1-to-1 ratio. So again, I thank everyone at the council for their opportunity to speak tonight and for all the conversations I have. You know, we're grateful for the city for their support, and we look for brighter days ahead. And thanks again, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Ms. Wirth. All right, next I'll call on Stone Ray.
Oh, no.
And Stone, if you'll state your name and your address for the record, please.
Yes, ma'am. Beth, can you hear?
Yes, sir.
All right. My name is Stone Ray. My address is 345 Janelda Avenue, apartment B, downtown Auburn. I am a graduate of the School of Architecture, Planning, and Landscape Architecture here at Auburn University. And I have a particular passion for the future of American cities, urban policy, and particularly parking. I spoke to this somewhat at Planning Commission, and I wanted to reiterate some of those things because I think they're extremely interesting. But first, I want to remind everyone what their charge is here tonight. What is being asked of you is to decide whether the corner of Wright Street and Magnolia Avenue in the urban core is an appropriate location for a hotel. It is general. It doesn't determine any flag, any design, or anything else. But because of the waiver mentioned in the e-packet and that being picked up by media outlets, the discussion has shifted. And I have some points I'd like to offer the council, just so you have some tools in your tool belt when speaking about parking policy or making decisions where parking policy is included or not included for this matter. First, I want to mention Forrest said at our planning commission meeting last Thursday that we do not have a separate definition for an urban hotel versus a suburban hotel. And I think that explains why our parking requirements of over 250 spaces for this lot is so high. And I think it also explains why a waiver is being requested, because this hotel is of an urban capacity rather than a suburban one. Secondly, I want to thank Tim for those great words about our city and their vision for creating an establishment for all of us to enjoy in downtown Auburn. Graduate Hotels employs HPA Architecture, which is a wonderful firm out of Chicago. They happen to be rated the Firm of the Year by AIA Chicago in 2018. And I don't think this firm or the local engineers involved in this project arrive in Auburn and think that Auburn's parking policy is great. I actually think that they have better ideas, right? They are designers by trade, and our parking policies, like many American cities, are draconian, and it's sort of a pseudoscience. Thirdly, developers involved in this project, as Tim mentioned, I don't think that they are in the business of shooting themselves in the foot. I don't think they're in the business of providing unnecessary amount of parking than they need. And they're before you tonight asking for a conditional use so that they can move forward in what will probably be a very lengthy process in urban design. I don't think the site plans and the final numbers that of hotel keys or of parking spaces that you see in the e-packet are anything final. And I don't think that they would continue to spend money on design work until they know that a conditional use is approved. I think it's very preliminary. I also think there's a reason that parking is separated from this as an administrative decision. And quite frankly, it's because nobody on the city council knows anything about parking policy. The person that knows most about it is probably the developer of the site and our planning director. And given that, I want to say, because I'm a proponent of progressive ideas that are happening in American cities all over the place. I have a dream of Auburn progressing in a way in the 21st century that we can be proud of. I think that if our parking requirements were zero, that they would be proposing exactly what they're proposing. Okay, we always say the words, let the market decide. We say those words about every other endeavor, every other development activity, except when it comes for parking. Parking has become a very draconian model in the United States, and especially in Auburn. Through my research at the CADC, Auburn has some of the most egregious parking requirements for non-commercial uses, especially in urban districts. So we like to say we are pro-business. We like to say we are pro the little guy, but our parking requirements often mandate a huge assemblage of land, which automatically exterminates the small developer and lends itself to someone who can afford a very large construction project. This site happened, because of the topography, happens to be able to accommodate a basement level that so far shows 121 spaces. Okay, I think that's great. But I think any more to that on site, I'm not talking about off site, any more to that would be destructive, not only to the project, but of its urban design and its architecture, which is really the issue and the controversy we've been having for years. I've spoke about matters involving things like this for many years, and I want to say tonight a couple things about Auburn's recent development history and its context, so that those listening and the city council understand how parking is the biggest driver of how urban developments occur. The majority of Auburn's cherished context at Toomer's Corner, on College and Magnolia Street, all of those buildings that we love so much, they were built during a period of time where parking requirements did not exist. And as American cities began to suburbanize themselves and become unwalkable towards the car is when parking requirements spread rapidly across the country. Parking requirements are the #1 factor of bad architecture and bad urban design, and for the distaste of any new buildings in American cities, especially the city of Auburn. So just to put out there, why are the new buildings in Auburn so large, right? I'm speaking largely about student housing structures because what has been built recently, but they also, just like this hotel, have an egregious amount of parking required by our code. Many people like to say that they're large because the developers are greedy. And I'd like to propose that it is our parking requirements that are greedy. The buildings are only as large as the parking garages that they are required to mask by the city of Auburn. So often people say in meetings like this and in other outlets that they hate the big buildings, but at the same time, they demand more parking. I'm sorry, but they come together. The more parking you require, the larger assemblage of land you must have, because parking has a very strict geometry, right? It's a little over 300 square feet per car. Okay, that is very expensive real estate. And immediately the buildings become a block long and 75 feet tall. And there's no funding left for architectural detail or urban design elements that make our city walkable and enjoyable. I want to mention a couple of buildings that are existing and under construction and proposed in the city of Auburn as precedents for this building. The first is Magnolia Plaza. We're all familiar with Magnolia Plaza. It's a great urban building from the late 80s. Why does nobody hate that building? That building is 5 stories tall. It's almost a block long. Very similar in size to this proposed hotel because of the land, the size of the site, I mean. Why does nobody hate that building? It's been around for a very long time and it has caused no controversy. And I would like to propose is because that building has no parking. It has no parking on site. It was not required to stuff a parking garage inside of it somehow or some way. Secondly, the Thomas Building, recently constructed at Toomer's Corner, is a glorious building, great urban design, and I think everyone's proud of it. 0 on-site parking. The Watley Building is under construction now. It's a tall building, but everyone can tell already how it fits very nicely in the urban core. 0 on-site parking. Just like the historic buildings of Auburn, we're able to do better when the geometry of parking is less abrupt to our projects. And lastly, the proposed Tony and Reba Lane Culinary Arts Center, which we are so ecstatic about, that is just beginning construction on the corner of South College Street and Thatch Avenue. That building is out of our jurisdiction as a city in terms of zoning, and it is being developed by Auburn University. But it's still an important building to mention because not only does it include classrooms and restaurant and retail space, it includes a hotel. And that building is over 100 feet tall. It's only 6 floors. It has great architecture and a lot of money spent into its urban design. And it has not yet become a controversy at all. And it has 0 on-site parking. Parking is elsewhere. There's a deck down the block to accommodate its needs. But my point in mentioning all of these buildings tonight is that the best buildings that have been built in Auburn in recent years are ones without significant on-site parking. The ones with significant on-site parking are the student housing structures, which are so controversial because of the geometries of parking and how big they make the properties and how less inviting their budget makes the architecture, right? I, as someone, as an urbanist, as someone who's extremely interested in land use, and as our downtown grows, it might surprise people that literally half of the land that we've been developing downtown is for parking. Probably more parking spaces have been built in downtown Auburn than anything else, any other use in recent years. Yet there is no parking, quote unquote, as many people say. I'd like to propose that it is a management problem. Okay, it's an urban design problem. It is a policy problem. It is not a hotel problem. Okay, parking spaces exist. Developers, business owners can choose to allocate who uses them, what time of day they're used, how much they cost, etc. But the reason that this is separated from the council's decision tonight on a conditional use is because it is reserved for those who understand parking policy. And quite frankly, I'm not convinced that we understand it well enough in terms of urbanism, right? It's unfortunate because of the virus that we are not in depth with Auburn 2040 right now and discussing these topics, because I do not think that this building or this development project will be the last one to ask for parking variance or parking waiver. I think as we move further in the 21st century, we will see many more unique projects that are asking for all kinds of waivers that have to do with our existing zoning code. They will ask for parking waivers. They will ask for material waivers, right? For many years, we've been saying we're tired of the brick, but we haven't done anything about it. So for those that are concerned about this project and for some reason think that it should adhere to our existing code, we should just look at what our code produces. Our code has produced very controversial buildings. And if these developers and these designers have a better idea, I think it is worthwhile to entertain it. In Auburn, the majority of people do drive to their respective businesses. It has been a suburban city for a very long time. At its birth, it was an urban city. Before the age of cars, it was a walkable village. We all know that. But I would like to say a couple of things regarding people who may arrive at this hotel, whether to stay there or for events. This hotel will attract people who arrive by air. And I understand Auburn does not have a commercial terminal, but many in the public and perhaps some of you on the council may be surprised at the vast amount of people who arrive in the city via groom transportation from Atlanta. I've done it myself. Many of my friends and family have done it. On the hour, people arrive here at Auburn University Hotel's transit stop. Secondly, it's also surprising the amount of people, especially on major sport events, that arrive here via private aircraft and other things, right? So people always mention traffic studies as if it really means anything. I'd like to propose that we don't call them traffic studies, we call them mobility studies, because in the urban core, you're dealing with not only cars, but you're dealing with pedestrians and with bicycles and with transit riders. It's a very complex situation. And I think that the waiver requested tonight is extremely interesting. It is a sign, in my opinion, about the future. Cities, especially in urban cores, will be built with less parking. They will. It's just the future, and we're going to have to get used to it. And I think it is a sign of better things to come. I'm excited about the proposal for a hotel, but those were just a number of points through my research recently, and also over the course of 5 years at school here about parking policy and how it affects urban buildings. Because I think it is a discussion that we're not finished with, and we will continue to have at a later date. But given that, I want to again remind you what the charge is, which is to decide on a conditional use. I just thought that those points may be helpful in your decision process, or thinking about other comments that might be made about parking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Okay, at this time, I'm going to call on Lolly Steiner. And Lolly, if you'll state your name and address for the record, please.
Beth, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Good evening, council. I wanted to say first how handsome and beautiful each one of you council members look tonight. Clearly, you all have found your way to your local barber or stylist for a fresh haircut. And thank goodness for all of our small business owners. Before I share my conversation with the council tonight, I first wanted to share my respect for the Wirths and their investment in Auburn. The Coho is a beautiful property and a great addition to our community. Tonight, I wanted to quickly share a conversation I had this afternoon with my counterpart in Oxford, Mississippi, home of one of the Graduate hotels. And please know I called this person without any heads up, and her response was completely off the cuff. And I just thought it was appropriate to share tonight, because I feel like there's some people that might have some concerns about the Graduate Hotel as a corporate member of our community. So this was the senior vice president, and she happily shared these following remarks. The Graduate Hotel in downtown Mississippi is an absolutely beautiful facility in downtown. And remember, this has been there 5+ years potentially. And you know, to be able to say that about a property this many years into it is a big deal. She shared with me that the Graduate Hotel has a great corporate philosophy, which is very important to a community. She shared that the Graduate and their investors paid great attention to the detail and the design of the property. That each one of the rooms that you see online in their hotel in that property, you see it has a great distinct character of what Oxford, Mississippi represents. She shared that the lobby and the property itself is very inviting to the public, not only to the patrons who are staying there, but to the community as well, which I think is important. She shared that the investors brought great amenities to their downtown. She shared that they have a beautiful rooftop bar, and I'm not sure if this particular presence will have that, but I sure hope so, because she shared that rooftop bar gave a great presence to overlooking the downtown area and the square, as they call it in Oxford. She shared regarding the question regarding the park. I did specifically ask her about any parking issues that they have. And I've been to Oxford several times, and I know that we have a lot of the same characteristics, but she shared that that they have been very good. They have monitored their parking and their guest parking very efficiently, and has not provided any problems in their area that she knew of. And I think the best news of all is that she shared that the Graduate is a great community sponsor and a great community partner. And I think that's the best news of all. And so I fully respect your consideration tonight, and encourage you to allow this conditional use on behalf of the business community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steiner. Okay, at this time, I do not see any additional hands raised from our attendees. Are there any other attendees who wish to raise their hand? Okay, I see one. Ms. Santos, Victoria Santos. Ms. Santos, if you'll state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. It's Victoria Santos, 876 Tulane Road, Auburn, Alabama. And I hadn't planned to speak today. There really wasn't much I was going to say, but listening to the Wirths and listening to everybody, I think that there's a lot of good conversation, a lot of good points, and I just wanted to chime in, and I hope that the council will take the Wirths' comments and questions seriously, because I think that from what they've said, I think that they've addressed the logistical issues more than, I have no doubt that this hotel is going to be beautiful and gorgeous and that they'll want to work with the community, but logistically, I think it's important to visit those questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Santos.
Thank you.
All right, and then I also see a hand raised by the applicant, Representative Parker Lewis. And Parker, if you will also state your name and address for the record.
Hey, Beth.
I hear you now, and we see you.
Oh, great. I want to address Lolly's haircut comment because I have not visited the salon yet. Okay, appreciate the time tonight. I just wanted to answer just a quick question that was raised concerning the traffic study. I know, obviously, I know we're here to talk about use, but we're also talking parking, and some questions were raised about traffic study and drop-off area and some of those things. And let me answer that by just saying, from a traffic study standpoint, we definitely are going to have a traffic study. We are going to have one. We need to wait on that traffic study until students are back in session so that we can get accurate counts. As much as it may benefit our project to do a traffic study right now, with so many vehicles not on the road, that's not really what our engineering department wants to see. They want to see some actual numbers. So we will be doing a traffic study. We will be doing that hopefully in the fall. Hopefully we're back in session and the students return and we're doing a full-blown traffic study. In terms of drop-off to the hotel, that will not be on Wright Street. We've been told just enough early on to know that, you guys and we as the city have just sort of remodeled Wright Street so that it's two-way traffic again. It's got a designated left turn as you head south. As you get to Magnolia, you can now turn left in a designated lane and right in a designated lane. Wright Street's not an option for us in drop-off. We own, the parcel has the property that has the sort of the rear access to McDonald's that comes off of Wright Street that I think most of us are familiar with that connection to the McDonald's property that comes through the applicant's property or what will be the applicant's property. We've got a lot to consider with that drop off, including some underground power and some transformer locations. And so a lot of that is obviously not worked out. It will be worked out during design, just like every project that we work on. I think it's important for us to, I think it's important for me to note that I've worked on probably a dozen projects in the urban core over the years. And there's always a lot of things that have to get worked out sort of during design. They're thought of right now, but they're definitely not fully realized. So I know we're talking about conditional use tonight. I know parking's been brought up. I know the client has shared that we're clearly going to address the parking needs with a plan. I would say probably 3 or 4 of my previous projects in the urban core followed this exact same format, where a use was approved, a plan for parking was required. I'm thinking recently of this, the Southeastern Bar. Originally that was an event space, and that had a parking plan that was was going to be part of the discussion, but that plan wasn't ready in the use stage. There's a lot of things for us to review as we put that parking plan together. So be happy to answer any other questions. I just felt like I should answer questions that were sort of directly asked of me.
Okay, Mr. Lewis, if you don't mind, we'll wait till we close the public hearing to ask any additional questions. Is that acceptable?
Yeah,
Are there any other attendees who wish to speak on this issue? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. At this time, do I have a motion for the item that is before us?
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments or discussion regarding this item?
I had a question come to me from a constituent, so I just wanted to get that question asked. And it's, have there been other variances granted that amount to half of the required number of parking spaces? And can Forrest answer that, or Jim?
Jim?
Or someone?
I can.
Yeah, I'll let Forrest answer that.
Okay.
I can answer that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, this would be in its current form, this would be the largest waiver that I have seen sought to this point in time. Now, with having said that, the planning director's purview, as mentioned earlier, goes back to 2012. I have probably reviewed less than 10 parking variance requests in 8 years. So that you don't see these very frequently, but the use that you see them the most for are hotels. I would say half of the variances I've reviewed have been for hotel projects.
Thank you.
Including the two we talked about tonight.
There's a second follow-up to that, to the question too. I'm trying to, does your recommendation, or I guess what is your recommendation? Do you have a recommendation to share? Or is
I do not. I take this very seriously, and you can see why because of all the discussion that this has garnered. But I've got an analysis from the applicant's engineer, and I'm conducting my own independent research and benchmarking. And I've said this before, I'm going to take the time that's necessary to make sure we get this right. So I do not have, I'm well on the way, but it has not been finalized by any means.
Thank you.
Any other council members have any comments or questions?
Yes, I do. This is Kelly.
Yes, sir.
First off, let me say I have no doubt that a hotel at that location would be a good use eventually. And I also want to say that I have been to the Graduate in Oxford, and I've been impressed with that property as well. But again, I believe that we are considering not just conditional use for a generic commercial and entertainment use, but we are considering a conditional use for a specific project that is before us. And those of you that disagree with me on that, I want to call your attention back to the one we just approved a few minutes ago for was a basic commercial recreational use for the miniature golf course. You know, we took 2 separate council meetings to get into that because we had such specific questions about the individual project, not just the overall recreational use. So I do think it's appropriate that we discuss the project before us and not just a hotel in general. I would like to recognize Mr. Cotton's willingness to do this. Of course, I know it's by ordinance, but during the planning commission meeting, he gave them the option rather to wait on his decision that he has to make in consideration of this waiver. And I would like to propose that we do that as well. that I'm assuming that well, let me ask Mr. Cotton how long he thinks it might take, but I was thinking in terms of a month. And if that were the case, then I would like to move to table this item to a specific date so that we can consider the overall recommendation from the city planning director. And so that we're not voting on something that is generic in nature. We don't really know what we're voting on. So again, I would like to move to table to a specific date.
Jim, can we address Mr. Griswold's questions, understanding that there is already a motion and a second on the table?
Yeah, I believe he is within his rights to move to postpone this item. There would have to be a second, then you'd have to vote on that. If that passed, then you'd be done. If it failed, then you're back to where you started.
Agreed.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Are we seconding, and just to be clear on what Kelly's asking, because I'm just confused about the whole thing, because I thought from the beginning that we was only voting for the conditional use, I guess, of a generic hotel.
That is correct.
All these other issues have come up about parking, and I thought that was not the issue tonight.
Correct.
So
that is correct. You are correct.
I don't believe she is correct, based on our history that we just voted half an hour ago on another project where we went into extreme detail.
Okay, well, Ms. Taylor has the floor. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, now I'm really confused. Okay, what am I correct on? Am I correct to say that we're just voting on conditional use for just a generic hotel? Or are we voting tonight on a conditional use and to consider all the other options like the parking? So I'm just confused. And I have no problem with a hotel. I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm trying to say, but I guess it's just so much confusion as to what we are voting on. And if we're just voting on just the conditional use of a generic hotel, then I agree that, the hotel should be there. But if it's totally different, and somebody please make me understand, because I've sat here and I've listened at both sides of the story, I'm getting more and more confused as to what we're actually voting on tonight.
Certainly. Jim, do you mind reading what the request is before us, the agenda item before us?
So you are voting on conditional use approval for a hotel on property located at 202 and 212 West Magnolia Avenue. Now that's what the original motion or the original item coming before you. Right now, Councilman Griswold has asked you to vote on postponing this for a month. So right now, before you is, do you want to go ahead and vote on this thing tonight, or do you want to postpone it for a month? Mr. Griswold wants to postpone it for a month. He has a motion on the table. He's looking for a second.
Okay, so do I have a second for Mr. Griswold's motion? All right, seeing none, we will go back to the original motion, which is on the table, and continue our discussion regarding that. I do have a question of the applicant. If Mr. Lewis could please discuss the waiver request. And I think there is if you would just address that, please.
Your question is to address, I guess, or address the quantity of the waiver. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, if you would just cover the applicant's request and the requested number of parking spaces and where that stands.
Okay, sure. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's a little bit of confusion, I think, on what's been sort of published and what's been talked about, my client is not seeking a waiver. I think the question to Mr. Cotton was, has there ever been this large of a waiver sought? I think what that's probably addressing is the waiver request from the 258 that would be required by the ordinance versus the 121 that's on site. That's a pretty large gap. However, I think it's very important for us to remember that the 258 is based on the commercial uses that are within the hotel that do not include the keys and the beds. So in other words, the food and beverage component, the sort of meeting space and things. So typically, we've seen in the past that a lot of that is not required to have a downtown parking. For example, Pyology is a restaurant that requires no parking downtown. Mellow Mushroom, 1716 Bar, Rhapsody is a retail place downtown that requires no urban core parking. So if you take some of those commercial uses off, and my client is, as you know, has already mentioned tonight that if a previous precedent has been set for 1 per key, my client has already said we'll provide the 1 per key. So if we've got 177 keys and hotel rooms, then you've got the 121 on site, which would leave 56 that we have to accommodate off site. Now, quite frankly, that's part of our parking plan. We've got a lot to come up with there. It is very important, I think, for us as a community to note that there's a huge difference between trying to find 56 parking spaces. You know, for me and my wife to try to go down and find a parking space, that's a very different scenario than leased parking spaces. We've got some large apartment complexes, older places downtown that have a ton of parking available. If you were paying them for that parking, you could probably park there. You can't really park there. You get towed if you're just going to park in their lot for free because it's not public parking. So that gets back to the sort of nature of the parking plan that we have to come up with. But back to your question about what the waiver request is, if Mr. Cotton does his analysis and does his review and he comes back and says, yeah, we need you to be 1 per key because that's what we've done at other hotels, that's appropriate, then our number goes to 177, and it's comparable to sort of every other hotel project. So if you say 258 versus 121, you're really not telling the whole story relative to the rest of our urban core projects and the rest of our urban core hotels and even some of our suburban hotels, but especially when you consider the commercial parking requirements in the urban core and what's required. Does that answer some of that question?
I believe so. Any questions from the council to Mr. Lewis? Thank you, Mr. Lewis. All right, I want to make sure that each council person has an opportunity to address this issue if you should choose to. Any other council members have questions or discussion regarding this item?
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments, if I may, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
I really like the prospect of having this building in Auburn. It sounds really exciting. I think there is a measure of public fear that somehow the taxpayer dollars are going to subsidize the parking, even though parking is not in our purview tonight. And it's my understanding from some conversations that I've had right from the beginning of this proposed hotel that right in the initial stages, neither the city were willing to entertain the idea that the new parking deck yet to be built would be leasable by this organization, nor the university would consider any public parking space, university property parking spaces, and to which the developers understood and were willing to move forward on that understanding. And I think there's somehow rumors in the public that we as a city are going to somehow subsidize this hotel. And I just, maybe if Parker could speak to that issue as well, to just get that type of speculation put away appropriately.
Yes, be
Mr.
happy
Lewis?
to.
Yes.
Be happy to, Mr. Parsons. Thank you. Yes, you are correct. The city staff was very clear to my client from the get-go that, yeah, we're building a new city parking deck, but that new city parking deck is to address our parking issues as a city that we're already having. The city's already told graduate hotels that they're not going to be able to save 50 or 60 parking spaces for us to be leased. Now, the public, if I go down to the graduate hotel to go to their restaurant and eat, I can park in the city parking deck just as any citizen can. But that's a clear distinction between the city reserving spaces for the graduate hotels. That's not going to be in play. I spoke to the university as well. They were, as an adjoining property owner, the university was notified. The university reached out to me and was very polite and just said, hey, just a heads up, we've got our own parking issues and we're not going to be able to be your parking solution. So you're exactly right. The client is fully aware that they've got to address whatever that parking number is. They've got to address it themselves and with, private agreements that the city's going to need to be able to document those private agreements, but the city's not the one that's going to be providing the parking.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions or discussion?
Yes, Beth, I have one other question I'd like to ask. Now you're talking about 176, 121 offsite parking and 56 on 56 offsite and 120. I'm just reading my notes now. On-site parking. Now, what about the employees? Now they talking about employing 70 to 100 employees. So is this going to accommodate employees or just the people who actually are going to be renting the rooms out?
I will let the applicant address that. Mr. Lewis?
Yes, I think the best person to answer that may be Tim Ryan, just since they are the actual sort of owners and managers of their hotels. Tim, can you address that question, please?
Sure, bud, happy to. So first of all, to get the quantification kind of nailed down, we anticipate between 65 and 75 full-time jobs, and then being north of 100 with part-time roles as well, just on the hotel and Valley operating side of things. So as we kind of look at the parking count, it's holistic. We are used, as I said before, we're very used to having some mix of on-site and off-site parking throughout our portfolio. In many cases, we have entirely off-site parking. So in more urban settings, I'll call this urban, though Auburn may not be the biggest city, but it's not Atlanta, but it's an urban setting in this location. A lot of your employees are able to walk, bike, Uber, or bus to work, which helps relieve the parking need to some degree. But we do look at it holistically. And I was just looking through my notes at a very good kind of comparable. Comp is a slang term you'll probably don't hear a lot, but in Bloomington, Indiana, so big state school, about an hour and a half from Indianapolis, pretty comparable in size and scale to Auburn University in the city of Auburn relative to Atlanta. We had a parking requirement that was literally zero. And we built, it was 144 rooms. I'm gonna confirm so I don't misspeak here. So we built a brand new hotel from scratch, as we aim and hope to do here. And yeah, 146 rooms, 0 parking was required. And by our own accord, we provided for 115 spaces on site because that was the practical thing to do to support the operation, the employees, and capture, what we needed for local traffic who might be driving in, not walking in from the local community. So I share that to reinforce that we're super thoughtful about this. We have to get it right. If we shoot ourselves in the foot, we've taken all the risk and we suffer all the loss, and that's not an acceptable outcome. So, so I guess all that is just to reinforce that we're thoughtful about it. This detailed parking study is going to help us better inform our plan. My sense, based on our portfolio of 40 hotels, 6,000 rooms across the United States, is that our actual need will be less than 1 per key, except for game day weekends. But we're happy to provide for 1 per key just to stay in, be congruent and consistent with the precedent that's been set there, because we understand that that helps kind of preserve an atmosphere of fairness and consistency. So we take, we approach that requirement willingly and readily, which has been kind of my big goal tonight, is to make that clear. Like, we have always been prepared to and expecting to have parking of 1 per room. And we've accommodated a huge chunk of that on site in a way that's involved a lot of architectural creativity. And the gentleman who spoke earlier, Stone, was on point about the realities of the immense cost of doing that, but are finding a way to do that because we knew it was important to the community and important to hopefully, we thought it would help simplify this process. Maybe that was naive, but it's always been our intention.
Thank you. Connie, do you have any additional questions?
No, I don't have any additional question, but he didn't actually answer my question, but I guess that's the best answer he can give, because he's still talking about maybe an extra 100 Paul, because you can't force people to actually use Uber or any other in order to get to work. But if that's what their choice is, now that's going to put it to me on a whole nother level as far as employees go. Who are you trying to accommodate, for employment? Is it just students or local people? So, and that may be another subject.
Mr. Ryan, do you want to address kind of your hiring?
No, I'd be happy to. It's a great opportunity. So Auburn is one of those communities where there is a hospitality school, and we do embrace the opportunity to help kind of groom talent and launch careers for youngsters in college, but it's by no means our primary base of looking for talent. We focus on folks in the local community and the greater region, and those are our tried and true employees. I mean, college students are transitory by definition. They're out in a few years and they're moving on. So we love the opportunities to help them develop, and if they're passionate about hospitality, we'd love to help them succeed and see where they might overlap with our company broadly across the country as we grow. But from a local level, from a practical level, I mean, the folks that we aim to hire are typically folks that are already working in hospitality, hotels, restaurants, and are less enfranchised with what they're doing than they could be working with us. And I know that, I can't speak to it too intelligently, I'll own this, but at the property level, I know that our local leadership teams are always kind of catering to the local situation with regard to transit options, parking options, lack thereof, and helping people kind of make sure they have what they need with regard to getting to and from work. That's everything. I mean, we're nothing without our workforce. And I think that's one of the most important pillars of hospitality is it's a human business. I mean, it's all about having great people who buy into the culture of service and wanting to kind of improve other people's journey. And if you don't get out of bed wanting to make someone else's day better, you probably shouldn't be in hospitality. And so we hire for fit, and we try to empower people to grow within our organization. And we understand that, every locality has its own kind of unique set of constraints and challenges, whether, it's regarding a commute or certain work hours or, there's any number of things. I personally grew up working in hotels. My first job as a kid was parking cars in California when I was 16, and then I got to work my way up to being, a bus boy and then a server, and I try to stay close to it because it's what the business is built on. It's just people and people taking care of people. So we put a lot of care and thought into that. I wish I had like a data point to help satisfy your concerns about people getting to and from work, but I'm not even sure it exists because each location, each community we serve is so unique. I mean, we're in major cities like, New York City and Seattle, and then we're in Oxford, Mississippi and Athens, Georgia, and places in between like Lincoln, Nebraska, and the scale of all those communities and what they do or don't have with regard to how folks get around is completely unique and personal to those communities. But I can tell you in good faith that we do absolutely make it a priority to, empower our workforce and make sure that they've got, a comfortable, accessible, manageable way of getting to and from work. And I think in our business, if it's not football Saturday, more often than not, folks never have an issue parking. I mean, they joke like, don't build the church for Easter Sunday. And what I hear a lot from folks is like, oh, have you, Starkville, Mississippi, have you ever been there on game day? And I'm like, well, you ever been there the 359 other days of the year? There's nothing going on. But people's memories are really anchored on those few, but really, really powerful moments of extreme compression in traffic. And I think what it tends to do is sway. It kind of creates a little bit of a bias around what the actual day-to-day realistic level of need is. And so it's more like, let's plan for and solve for a typical day, a typical month, and then have our kind of over and above solutions ready for graduation, ready for football, ready for move-in weekend. But, ultimately you're talking about probably less than 25 days out of 365 a year. I hope that's kind of helpful context, but that's part of how we think through and solve for these needs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone
Thank
else?
I would just acknowledge and appreciate, I would say that I appreciate the conversation. We've obviously had lots of conversation tonight on a conditional use request, and warranted. It's out there now. We're discussing a little more than probably your typical conditional use request, but I think that's been good perhaps in this situation. I hope it alleviates some concerns. There's been an opportunity for the applicant to try to just alleviate some concern anyway. I feel personally, that we may be putting the cart before the horse a little bit. It was admitted earlier, there are months of developmental conversations that take place on something like this. I mean, this is just, in my opinion, giving them the opportunity to start planning, and we've, they shouldn't plan much until they get conditional use. And we could be talking about, any other application, but I think it's come to light that there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of planning going into this project. Rightfully so, we're talking about a lot of capital, but there's been a lot of thought and consideration put in good faith that they'll get the opportunity to move forward. This forgive me, Mr. Ryan, this thing could fall apart in 6 months. We have to give them the opportunity to continue these developmental plans and put their project out there. There'll be lots of conversations about streetlights, just like there are about parking. And I appreciate our staff's ability and willingness to negotiate and decide and help bring forth a product that we can all be proud of. And I think tonight's at least given other stakeholders and citizenry the opportunity to, frankly, pretty early on in the process, express some concerns and ask some questions that have been addressed, in my opinion. So, we're here for conditional use. There's obviously a lot of thought and consideration going into a little bit further down the timeline. But thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Hovey. Anyone else have anything before we take a vote?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Whitten. I'd like to say that I agree with Councilperson Hovey's sentiment. It is just conditional use. But one thing I think is important to keep in mind is Auburn Bank's constructing over 500 space parking deck that's going to be downtown. And more important than that, they're talking about investing over $60 million in the city of Auburn, and no guarantees of any kind of incentive or any kind of tax break, anything that's just unheard of. And frankly, I think it would be a great opportunity for the city, especially in the times we're in. We got a lot of people in our city as well as America unemployed right now. And I guarantee there's a lot of cities out there our size that would love to have this very problem. The company, what I'm hearing tonight, they're already willing to do at least for sure one key per space, and I feel like there'll be more. But I've never heard of anybody wanting to spend over $60 million, not want some type of tax break or anything like that. So I think that goes to show what kind of people we're dealing with. Mrs. Lolly talking with the Chamber of Commerce over there in Oxford. I looked it up online and saw what kind of what they're offering. And I just really would hate to let something like this slip through our fingers because we can't agree to conditional use, which, like Councilperson Hovey said, we're just getting started. But I think it's very important that we move forward tonight and to move on to the next chapter in this development and see how it works out. But again, I think about the jobs. Being a son of a parent who's been out of work for a while, it gets tough on the kids and everybody else involved. And you're talking about bringing at least 70-something jobs, maybe 100 of part-time jobs. And it's not going to be just GSA employees. It's going to be people that want to work here in the city of Auburn, our citizens. And I think that's very important to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. With that, I do want to just make a couple of comments. I think it's very important that we recognize the time and investment that this applicant has taken. They've stated that they've worked over 5 years to try to find a home in Auburn. And we have demonstrated in the past that a hotel is an appropriate use in the urban core. And this location is in the urban core. It's also been demonstrated in the past that conditional use approval has been granted prior to the parking being determined with regard to a hotel in the urban core. And also that same property received a parking waiver and the precedent was set for 1-to-1 key to parking space. If we're going to speak equitably, I think it is the right of the applicant to avail themselves of the same procedures and standards that we have set and have put in place in the past. I do think it's important to note that this applicant will still have to go through the development review team, the DRT, also the Downtown Design Review Committee, a traffic study, seek approval for the parking waiver from the planning director, and also possibly have approval for a development agreement from this body. So there, like Councilperson Dawson stated, there are still many, many steps to go before them. I do think it's also important to note that this is a conditional use, which is the motion on the table. And I would like to thank everybody who's weighed in from the public and on this council and the staff's time and the planning commission's time in evaluating this. And with that, I would like to say, since we have a motion, all in favor, say yay. Yay.
Aye.
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 Yeah.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, seeing none. Lindsay? I believe that.
Lindsay, you got the vote?
You're on mute, Lindsay.
Oh, okay.
Do I
So-
need to take a roll call on this?
No, you got the vote though.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, great.
So Mayor Pro Tem, those are all the items we have on the agenda this evening.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.